DevOps in K-12 with Steve Hickman.
The Azure DevOps Podcast is a show for developers and DevOps professionals shipping software using Microsoft technologies. Each show brings you hard-hitting interviews with industry experts, innovating better methods, and sharing success stories. Listen on to learn how to increase quality, ship quickly, and operate well. And now your host, Jeffrey Palermo.
Welcome to the show. I'm Jeffrey Palermo, your humble host. Make sure to check out www.azuredevops.show for past episodes and show notes. And we're 2 weeks out from the virtual Microsoft Build Conference. If you didn't see the content that you wanted, all of that is recorded, available to you. Go check it out. And again, a lot of user groups are running virtual events. If you are running a user group or part of one and you're doing some virtual online speaking, I'd love to speak at one of your group events. I've been doing a ton of that, and it's very rewarding. I love doing that. Also, if you are tuning in for the first time to this podcast, the Azure DevOps Podcast is for developers who are shipping software with Microsoft technologies. And the goal here is for all development teams to be able to move fast, deliver quality, and run their systems with confidence. Now, today we have as a guest on the show, Steve Hickman. And Steve is a 25-year veteran of the software industry, and from starting out as an individual programmer to a director of development to his current executive role managing many developers. He's built many software systems in a variety of environments. And he was the director of technology for a major school district in Texas for a long time, and has also overseen technology for private industry as well. So, Steve, welcome to the show. How are you, sir?
I'm doing great. Thank you, Jeffrey. Glad to be here.
Now, you've been deep in the trenches in school districts, and that's the topic for today, and in K through 12 essentially. But I got to imagine that school districts are a different beast, but maybe they're similar to what is it about school districts in the software world that kind of makes them unique or makes them a little bit different?
Well, I would say probably one of the big things that school districts face, and this may be common to some businesses, but school districts are, whether it's technology or any other area of the school district, they're always faced with having to do more with less. And so they're constantly looking for better ways to do things and cheaper ways to do things.
Well, I think I'd like to divulge this secret to the listeners, those who might not know, but there was a school district in Texas where I got a summer job right out of high school, and you were my first boss for my very first programming job when I was 18 years old. And so You and I have known each other for that long. And
at least 2 or 3 years now.
So, yes. So listeners on the show, Steve has been a mentor and dear friend for a long time, and anything he has to say is worth listening to. But we first started working together when I was 18 years old at one of those school districts. And so I kind of was, on a very, very small, two programmers or something?
But we had a summer team of 2.
Right.
So.
And that was back when school districts just weren't doing a lot of the things they are today, technology wise or custom development wise. But what has changed over the last 2.5 decades, and what has stayed the same?
Well, what's changed is you've gone probably from, when I first started, very mainframe centric type systems and development, that kind of thing, to You moved into the personal computer age where everything was very PC centric, and then now that kind of gave way to then being very server sided as networks developed, and now, of course, now we've got the cloud. So we've got servers running in the cloud, and everybody looking for just access from anywhere type things. So that's kind of what's changed. What hasn't changed is really the process of how you develop good quality software. Whether it was writing a COBOL program back on a Unisys mainframe to today, writing something in .NET Core and publishing it on a cloud server someplace. You always had the problems of managing source code. You always have the problems of different developers working in siloed environments. So you've always got a developer that worked in the student industry, and then you got another developer that works for finance, and then you got somebody that works for HR maybe, or maintenance, or transportation, and they tend to focus in those areas. So one of the things that also I think has been a problem is just testing. So back when I first started, you would test almost in production.
Mm-hmm.
So it's like, all right, we're going to release it, and we'll see if there's a bug, and if there's a bug, we'll fix it and release the next new version the next day. And so now we've got UAT environments, we've got automated testing and all that kind of stuff, and probably the biggest change is how things get deployed. It used to be very manual. You'd have to take down the server, install all the new software on it, pray that when you brought it up, it would actually run.
Mm-hmm.
You might have to go mess with some network settings, or go mess with some internet information server settings, or just to get it to run. And now we have the ability to completely automate that to where deployments are nearly problem free.
Mm-hmm.
And then probably one of the hardest things that we're seeing really kind of over time is just visibility. I know the district that I came from, one of their things is just they've got so many things to do, and having visibility to know what is that list of tasks that we have to do, so that the superintendent can help set priorities and all that, and just being able to say, well, here is the full list of things that need to be done, and here's the priorities, and here's what's running slow in terms of development, and here's what's moving fast, and where are blockers and all that kind of stuff. So just providing great visibility for both the manager level people and the board level people down to the developer, so that they can work without having to really, they'll know what the next task is, and be able to move through things swiftly.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Now, when you think of when I think of a school district, I don't get the picture of like the Facebook engineering floor or whatnot. Massive numbers of people. What is there a normal? What do these? How are these teams normally made up? And how big is there? Is there an average? Is there a normal in K through 12?
I know there's definitely a stereotype that kind of comes to mind, and I don't know if it's the average or not, but the stereotype is, you've got somebody who's in a position, they've probably been there either a long time or they're new. Mm-hmm. So you've got a new developer out of college, or you may have somebody that's been working on the finance system for the last 30 years.
Mm-hmm.
They've seen everything. And of course, those people are very valuable because they have that historical knowledge of how things work. But they also kind of are somewhat fixed in their ways of how they do work. And so Then you got the new person coming in, and they're always pushing the older people to try to adopt some of the new different methodologies that are coming out. And there's a balance there of kind of that old and new. Whereas when I think about like a Facebook floor, your average age is probably in the 20s, if not the early 30s. And everything's moving very quickly, very, very fast. And that's the other thing you see in the school district is you do have some level of bureaucracy, where, before you can do something, it has to go up the chain and be approved. And so sometimes things can get kind of bogged down in just, the approval process of, again, what's happening. Whereas, when you're over at Google or Facebook, things are happening just very fast. And if they don't like what happened, they'll roll it back, so. But everything's always very much on the move. And then, of course, everything is very cutting edge in terms of the technology being used to develop. On
the topic of testing and deployments, there's there's your experience of, hey, what tends to be, if there's a normal in K through 12 and there's bound to be somebody from some school district say, no, we don't do it like that. Or, hey, we're cutting edge on this factor. But what are the similarities that may exist with non-education, and what are the factors that might be similar in small business?
So I think in a developer's lifetime, probably the hardest thing to do is write documentation. And then the next hardest thing is to provide test coverage for your code. And so, being able to create automated full system tests, I think is critically important, whether you're a school district with a small development team or you're a small business that has one or two developers. Being able to develop code and have confidence when you release it, you're not introducing new issues. So having tests that will go in and check the code, make sure that the code that you wrote previously is operating the way you intended it to. A lot of times, in software development, we release code, and that code could break a feature that I wrote the week before, or maybe something I wrote 2 months ago. Mm-hmm. And so, having automated tests that go in and check that and make sure that the system is still operating the way it was designed to operate, I think that's critically important. And just even in testing too. You have performance and security type issues too. And so you want to make sure that, the code that I'm releasing isn't also making the system run slower. Mm-hmm. and being able to benchmark that as each time you release code, being able to see that. And then of course, security, is the utmost importance in any industry, and each industry kind of has its own particular compliance things that they have to observe. In education, it's going to be FERPA, and in medical it's going to be HIPAA, and then you've got all the financial type things in the financial industry. But being able to develop and release code with the assurance that you're meeting all the compliance criteria that you need that you're trying to meet, and even checking to make sure that that doesn't have vulnerabilities for hackers to be able to come in and do that. So just that whole testing suite of being able to release code with confidence that you've minimized at least the risk.
Well, that sounds like a big deal. You mentioned HIPAA, but I know that's with patient record confidentiality and a lot of the same security methods that allow compliance with HIPAA have a lot of cross-pollination with PCI compliance. And so what is it about FERPA that is different from a development perspective, and what's the same?
From a development perspective, I think it's all the same. It's making sure that you're not releasing personal identifiable information, whether it's a child's grades or their shot record, which would be a HIPAA type thing, or their discipline records or anything like that. So it's making sure that information is only available to the right set of eyes, right? And make sure that people who don't have any business seeing information don't see it. And that's the same thing for HIPAA, and that a lot of PCI is just going to be, basically user access and making sure that people only have access to the information that they're supposed to have access to.
Mm-hmm.
So I think it really, what you would do in one industry is going to be really the same for the other, because it's all about access.
So, and we didn't even define the acronyms. FERPA is the Family Educational Rights and Privacy Act, which, if you want some light reading.
Yeah, right.
But that's some serious, that's a serious compliance bar, because that puts K through 12 developers right on the level with healthcare developers or financial sector developers. The bar's pretty high.
Right.
So what are some of the challenges there when it comes to security practices that are just absolutely essential in the DevOps environment in K through 12?
Well, I think it's mostly process, right? So, it's understanding the laws and the policies, understanding the laws and adopting the policies, and then doing the checks to make sure that you are adhering to the policies, right? And so it's really process driven. And then being able to, again, from a testing perspective, go, okay, can I log in as an administrator and see information? Then can I log in as a teacher and can I see information that I shouldn't see? Or can I log in as a student and see other students' information? And being able to create those tests that give you that assurance that you're not releasing a system that is revealing information to people that shouldn't be seeing it, right? Mm-hmm. But definitely, where I think the breakdown is usually at the very top. You got the laws that are out there. That first step is just adopting the policies of how are you going to meet the requirements of that law, and being able to articulate that in a way that can flow down to a developer, so they go, oh, okay, I need to make sure this is happening and this isn't happening. Mm-hmm. And then having the discipline then to test your software to make sure you are following those policies that you've created, right?
Mm-hmm. At least in my kids' schools, there's a whole lot more cloud software being used, at least from a commercial product perspective. Has K through 12 gone through cloud adoption? Are they fully on the other side of that curve?
So I definitely would not say that they're fully. I'm sure there are some of the early adopters, and a lot of school districts will have, the Office 365, and that's kind of moving maybe some of their Office type stuff out to the cloud, and that's been good. I am not really seeing, we've worked with region service centers, we've worked with school districts, and we've worked with universities. And the one thing that was common among all three of those is generally they were working out of their data center. So they've got a physical data center located somewhere, in our case, somewhere in Texas, and they're looking to kind of keep that alive and going. I do know that some of the bigger school districts have put their toe in the water, so to speak, and have kind of created a cloud presence. And they may be hosting a third-party commercial software, on a cloud server, that kind of thing. Mm-hmm. And that's usually kind of at the prompting of the third party, because it makes it easy for them to be able to service it and all that, because it's in you don't have to have that physical access to the district data center. Mm-hmm. But I would say that school districts have been pretty slow in looking at moving applications, especially applications that they've written themselves, to the cloud. I think a lot of it has to do, again, kind of back to just the process of developing software and understanding how you can reduce friction. And when I say friction, I just mean, kind of cut through the bureaucracy that it takes to build, write the code, get it to build, and then deploy it. And when you have the ability to put software out on the cloud, now you're kind of have these kind of indiscriminate servers out there that you can put something out there, see it run. If you don't like what it's doing, you basically can just throw away that whole server and everything, and then basically build a new one for your next deployment or whatever you want to do. Whereas in the school district, you've got that server that you've had for 10 years, and that's where I put my code, and that's where it all has to reside, and that's where you run into all those problems of, well, my new code run on this server that's got some old operating system on it or something like that.
Mm-hmm.
But getting to the cloud, I think the cloud just offers a lot of opportunity for school districts. I know there's been a concern in the past of, is my data secure, right? And the last thing I want, we got FERPA, so is my data secure? And so when it's out there on a cloud, you don't have that fence around that data center. You don't even know where the data center is.
Right.
And so how do you feel secure? And I know just in my reading and understanding of things, Microsoft in the world of Azure, they've got thousands of security specialists that are watching over what's going on the Azure cloud. And they're building these processes that almost make it like impossible to create if you follow their process, it's almost impossible to create something that a hacker is going to be able to get to. And so I actually feel like you are more secure having your data sitting out on the cloud than possibly having it in a data center where, literally your students are on the same network as your data center, so to speak.
Mm-hmm.
And so at least in the cloud, you've got all that security infrastructure there too. Plus, you have the ability, once you're in the cloud, then you have the ability to scale. And so that's one of the big problems that school districts have is, well, I have this server and it's here, and if it's not enough, it's all I've got.
Yeah.
And so, if I need a bigger server, then, that could be 2 years from now that I get that bigger server. And when you go to the cloud, it's literally just clicking a couple of buttons and you've scaled up your server from, a 4-core server to a 16-core server, and you can add memory, you can add disk space just at the click of a button. And which then, school districts then get concerned about costs, but, you're paying as you're using it versus making this capital investment and buying a server and buying the server room and all of that. You're just paying for that little bit that you use. And when you don't need it, you can turn it down. And when you need it, beginning of the school year, there's a lot of stuff going on. Well, we can turn up the resources of the server, but then during the summer when nothing's going on, we could just turn it down to where it's just a slow trickle and, it's alive, but it's there. And you could really leverage good cost performance by just having it in a cloud infrastructure where you can turn things up and down as needed.
I bet you that over the last few months, there's maybe some data center bottlenecks that have come to light as practically everybody was using the network all day.
Yeah, right. Well, definitely there's probably some internet pipes that have gotten saturated, I'm sure, just trying to get back to the district home data center. So I'm sure you've seen that. And then just the reliance on servers in terms of, where are the kids going to turn in their homework? Well, it's going to be, they're emailing it in now. There is no choice. And so email servers are now undersized. The data pipes of getting all that information in and out of the school district. I would imagine some school districts have felt a little bit of pain with some of that. So.
Yeah, absolutely. So,
and of course, And of course, they've also been leveraging a lot of cloud type infrastructure too, like the Zooms and the Teams and those kinds of things too. And so they probably really have seen that benefit of the cloud by, wow, just overnight, I can turn up a whole new system that I never thought about using, all because it's out in the cloud.
Mm-hmm. Right. Well, for the people who are listening to this podcast who might work in a school district or somewhere in that ecosystem, what would be your best advice for how they could take this conversation and springboard to some of the capabilities that we talked about?
Well, I think there's a couple of different paths. One path is just to start doing some research, see what's out there, get a good understanding of where things are. There's definitely conferences out there. You mentioned at the beginning of the podcast, that Microsoft had their Build conference, and just going and watching some of those presentations are going to be kind of mind-opening, I believe. And then, of course, if you need to take some of that information and be able to make more sense of it and how it can be used in your specific environment, definitely we can help you with kind of making sense of some of that stuff and seeing what we've done with other school districts to help them utilize some of the new modern practices and tools and cloud infrastructure. Okay. Well, hey, Steve, I appreciate you coming on the show. This is a interesting conversation for me, and also I was kind of thinking back to what the environment was. Now, this is a long time ago, so yeah. Lots changed in the school district world since I was there for that job a long time ago. But I appreciate that. And if there's any links that we need to add to the show notes, listeners, make sure to look there, and we'll include those links for the things that we talked about. And Steve, I appreciate you coming on the show. Thank you very much, sir. Well, I enjoyed it. Thank you for having me.
And until next time, keep shipping.
You've been listening to the Azure DevOps Podcast, a show for developers and DevOps professionals shipping software using Microsoft technologies. Go to www.azuredevops.show for show notes and other episodes. On behalf of your host, Jeffrey Palermo, and our sponsors, thanks for listening, and may God bless you.